Okay, so I should be live. Hey, everybody. Uh, I am about 10 minutes late, 11 minutes late, and I have had a shite day. So this is let's see if we can pick up my mood some. Oh, I forgot to set up my secondary screen so I can see chat. Naughty, naughty. Hold on, let me set that up right now. How are you guys doing anyway? How y'all doing? Let me know how everything's going. Basically, we're going to do a multi-stream. There's like 4 or 5 little snippets from different streams I kind of want to talk about today. And then I know I have a video to start editing for Sunday. So the way it's going to work from here on out is that I will have a topic video every Sunday that I will put out, assuming, again, I keep the lights on. I will put a topic video every Sunday here on YouTube. It will be a produced video, edited, single topic. And then Monday through Thursday, I will do live streams. So I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with the live streams, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do watch-alongs Monday through Wednesday. If the watch-along goes long, in other words, if it's a very long topic and we don't get through the whole thing and cover all the material we want to cover, what we'll do is we will go all the way to the end of the week. If, on the other hand, we finish what we want to watch before the end of the week, on Thursday we'll have an open room. And the open room will be through a different, I guess dashboard is what they're called. Will be through a different dashboard. On Saturdays or Sundays, I haven't decided yet, will be my Twitch day. And then anybody who wants to do Helldivers 2 with me, let me know and we set up a group and set up a time, okay? All right. Let's go ahead and switch over here. So I want to cover some of the stuff that we kind of brisked over the last week. Do that one. Which one? By the way, the last few streams, I've had people in my chat who are incognito, and I've had some people some people watch on a different platform, okay? And even though we're chatting with each other, they're not showing up on my view count. And so I'm not really sure what that's about. I'm not sure if I'm being throttled or, quote unquote, the old school shadow banned. But no, there's something going on where not all my views are counting. So if you are watching my stream and you're enjoying it, I hate to sound cliche, please like, please subscribe, all that kind of stuff. But comment, please comment. That way we can see that people are actually watching the show. Or, the quote unquote, the old school. Okay. All right. There we go. Deconverted man, I can now see your chat. Sorry about that. Woohoo. Yeah, I've seen other people. I know Warren Smith was having a problem, and he's thinking it's conspiratorial because he's slightly conservative. I don't know. I just think it's. I just think maybe YouTube's just always been broken, and we've been seeing conspiracies where it's just bad coding. Okay. Let's see. Bam. All right. So we're gonna go from. This is the very end of misquoting Jesus, finding Jesus in Genesis. This is the question and answer part. And then from there, we're going to go over to Dan McCellen. I'm not sure if we're going to hit Dat Darling. She used to be called something else, Georgina Rose, I think. And then we're going to go to a few other things. Next week, we'll start off with the Taoist stuff. I'll pick a good long amount of Taoism, something that we can really sink our teeth into. Someone who's really talking about it in depth, and we'll listen, see our ears, see if there's any BS, see if there's any apologetics going on instead of just selling the faith as it is. Okay. Yes, spoilers for something you can watch for free on the internet. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, and we're starting.
It's what is kind of a result of the lower classes being the ones that converted. Thank you. And we have one final question that is somewhat related to our topic for next week. If Jesus came back today, would he look at what is being done in his name and say, you guys nailed it?
Be more likely to say, you people are nailing me. I mean, this is like, man, you're crucifying me all over again.
I think this is the question. If not, I'm going to have to back it up just a little bit. He gets asked a question about biblical interpretation, and if that's one of the reasons. And he tells a story about how when he was in college, he basically caused a fight by writing, by giving an answer one way or the other.
This is not
Shalom, Watchman.
what I was teaching. So I think we'll be talking about that with respect to very conservative Protestant Christianity, fundamentalism, in our next episode. But the kinds of things Jesus was teaching, I think, changed. Once they started changing as soon as his followers believed he got raised from the dead. This is part of what my next book is going to be about, is how Jesus' ethical teachings.
Oh, Deconverted Man, if you ever want to act out that play before you take off, when you get back, let me know. Maybe we can reenact that sometime. We'll play both parts. I think that was kind of fun what GPT chat did to our conversation. Have a good one, buddy. I hope you feel better.
Got transformed by his followers once they came to think he was raised from the dead. It changed everything for them, because his own teaching that a kingdom of God was soon to come and people needed to repent and prepare for this kingdom that was soon to arrive. They needed to be forgiven of their sins so they could enter into the kingdom. That got radically changed when they started thinking that Jesus' death is what brings us into the kingdom, not repentance. And so that started the change of Jesus' teachings. And, in these days, there aren't any, I don't know of any Christians who are actually, doing what Jesus was telling them to do. There may be some out there, but I've never met any. And so, which comes as a shock, and, people think it's arrogant of me, but I'm not. I generally think that Jesus was teaching things that people don't do. And so I don't think he would think that people are following what he was teaching. I think he would think they're following some other religion that's based on what they're saying about my death and resurrection, but they're not following my what I was teaching.
Thank you very much, audience. As ever, thank you all so much for your questions. But before we finish for the week, would you mind summarizing what we spoke about?
So we're lots of people talking about, okay, there you go. And so, and I was just talking about how, historically that's not true. Whoever wrote the books of Genesis, through the Garden of Eden, through the flood, I used to think about when I was a conservative. Some people think a lot about, and some people have never thought about some other religion that's based, in these days, to arrive. They need soon as his followers believed he got raised from the dead.
Would he look at what is being done in his name?
Is what brings us into the kingdom.
What we spoke about.
So we're talking about this interesting topic. If you just look up on the internet, look up, is Jesus in Genesis? Yeah, I'm sure you'll find, you can read Genesis in ways that can.
Then, thank you all and goodbye.
And that's perfectly fine. But it's not historically trying to put Jesus back there.
Audience, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and make sure you don't miss future episodes. Remember that you can use the code MJPodcast for a discount on all of Bart's courses over at www.bartehrman.com. Misquoting Jesus.
Let's see what happens when we go over here. Let's see if we can find it. Maybe it was the Luke one. Maybe. It wasn't the archaeology one. Let's see if it's here. If not, we'll skip over to the next one, which is down
I'm Aubrey. I went to St. Jude because I had a cancer.
These are words to work by. Supplies, solutions, support.
Stop with the music shit. Okay, maybe it's here.
Weekly update, where we get to catch up on all the latest about
are closely related to what I do that I've just, it's coming up soon. And so God is already present in Jesus' ministry.
You know what? Let me go back. Let me go back. Maybe I just took the wrong section.
Scholars do, and many Christians do, where you read Genesis just to try to understand Genesis in its own context. You know, we historical scholars insist that's a very good way to read the book of Genesis. It's how we should read most books. But there are...
Here's to back Dr. Ehrman's.
Jody's a piece of dynamite. She is very vibrant and came to Jerusalem. And what about those Dead Sea Scrolls? Well, in a time and place. If you don't know that time and place, you're not going to understand it. Historical Jesus or ancient Israel, or this is a good course to do it.
Where Bart answers real questions submitted by misquoting Jesus fans. If you'd like to submit a question for future segments, please visit
invented out of whole cloth. Today, many believers think it is literally true. Invented out. All right, Matthew's infancy narrative, with its Magi and star, seems to have been invented out of whole cloth. Today, they thought it was.
We don't have any kind of, readers' reports or any indication that he means what we pretty much mean literally word for word. But he realized that sometimes if you interpret a text literally, it can't be Father Origin in the 3rd century. Go all the way back. That's a good question. And
it wasn't a literal one. Of the Bible in.
I suppose they probably thought it happened, but we don't really know for sure.
Next question.
Okay, so set up for this. So I get a lot of pushback, even from scholars, even from people with PhDs, even from people who are friends with Bart Ehrman online. Friends, I don't know. They probably don't really know each other, but you know what I mean. They're running the same channel circles. And when I say what Bart Ehrman is about to say, people get really upset. Even one of my long-time subscribers from back when my channel was a completely different topic, Deconverted Man, they get upset when I say what Bart Ehrman is about to say. They don't like this. So I want to hear Bart Ehrman say it, and then I want to hear Dan McCellen say it. I want you to hear 3 different ways of saying this. Instead of it coming from me, hear it from 2 other sources. And these, again, secular sources on interpreting the Bible. And remember, I believe in the Bible, so this doesn't hurt your understanding or belief in the Bible, okay? All right, here we go. Interpretive methods when analyzing the Bible. There we go.
Question. You've mentioned that the literal or fundamentalist interpretation of the Bible emerged out of the 19th century and scientific developments that threatened people's faith. What was the interpretation before this if it wasn't a literal one?
Okay, now hear that again. Hear what she's saying. Because a lot of Protestants get mad at me when I say this. A lot of anti-theists who are not scholars get mad at me when I say this. But this is accepted, okay? This is accepted scholarship. This is accepted theology. This is just the truth. If you're not an evangelical fundamentalist, this is just the truth.
The Bible emerged out of the 19th century and scientific developments that threatened people's faith. What was the interpretation before this if it wasn't a literal interpretation of... Next question. You've mentioned that the literal or fundamentalist interpretation of the Bible...
The literalist or fundamentalist interpretation of the Bible
emerged out of the 19th century.
Emerged out of the 19th century. I'd push it back all the way to the maybe 16th century, but that's okay.
And scientific developments that threatened people's faith.
As a response to the scientific developments that threaten people's faith.
What was the interpretation before this if it wasn't a literal one?
What was the interpretation of the Bible or of Scripture before the fundamentalist approach, the literalist approach, if it wasn't a literal one? Okay, so that's what she's asking. That's what this interviewer or the person writing the question is asking. Okay, let's hear the response, which is the same response I give on my channel all the time.
No, that's a good question. And I didn't mean that the literal interpretation was invented in the 19th century. Literal interpretations go all the way back.
Yeah, I would say literal interpretations of the Bible, at least as we can document it, the first time we see it really hardcore is in John Christensen, but John Christensen puts very important limits on literal interpretation. because it then leads to absurdities. Even in the rabbinical fathers, the Midrash and the Rambam, you get warnings about don't interpret all of this literal. Here's how you tell the difference between what's literal and what's analogy, or allegory, I should say. Okay, so, but again, I would say the ultra-literalistic interpretation isn't a product of the Enlightenment. It's a product of the Protestant Reformation, and you can see its roots in the writings of John Calvin. Christian's my homie. In the writings of John Calvin and in the writings of Martin Luther, and they're getting their literal interpretation by misinterpreting not the Bible itself, but misinterpreting church fathers' implications. So they're misinterpreting Augustine, they're misinterpreting John Christensen, and they're anathematizing and denigrating the legacy of Origen. And I think all this, I think not the seed, but I guess the seed. I would say the precursor to this is that conflict. The parents of this is the conflict between Origen and John Christensen, and that produces the seed, which is planted by John Calvin and Martin Luther, which becomes ultraliteralism in the Americas, in American evangelical fundamentalism.
Our first Christian authors who talk about how to interpret texts have a variety of ways they interpret the Bible, the New Testament. So, for example, the church father Origen in the 3rd century has various ways. One of the ways that he calls it is katarema.
By the Spirit versus by the letter. John Christensen will advocate for by the letter. John Christensen comes later, but you pair these two people together because they have such contrasting views, and they're both very heavily influential in early Christianity.
Which is, there are two words in Greek, which means according to the word. By that he means what we would pretty much mean literally word for word. But he realized that sometimes if you interpret a text literally, it contradicts another text, or it makes no sense. And so he's very good at finding these contradictions and things. And he said, when that happens, it means you can't interpret it literally. You have to interpret it figuratively.
And that's what I say all the time. That's actually the warning sign I give to people, especially atheists, who say, well, how can you tell the difference? It's exactly this formula. That's how you tell the difference. If it leads to an absurdity, then you shouldn't be interpreting it as literal, as ultra-literalistic, I should say.
Or spiritually, it's not meant literally. So that goes way back. And then he developed that. And then over the centuries, this became the big deal. And by a few centuries later, there are 4 ways of interpreting a text. And the literal was considered to be the weakest.
Yes. Now, there does develop a 5th way, and some might say there's now a 6th way to interpret the text. But the way that I always learned it, and again, I learned this the first time I picked it up was from the Ecumenical Study Bible, the Oxford one, and then I found this method again in the Oxford NAB Catholic Study Bible, and then I started seeing it in other places, and eventually I found a source for it, I believe in Augustine.
Of the 4, you got to interpret literally. That's not really where the action is. The real action is what's going on underneath the literal reading, and that continued all the way up to the Reformation. Mm-hmm. So there always was a literal reading.
What really hurt it was Jonathan. Crap. Now I forgot their names. Martin Luther advocating for a plain and simple reading, and then anathemizing parts of the Bible that he thought disagreed with his interpretation. So he got rid of James. He got rid of Revelation. His fellow reformers pushed back against him because of doing that. But yeah, the Martin Luther Bible, if he had his way, would have a lot of the Catholic stuff just stripped from it. And it would just be a plain and simple, very literalist text, which you can't do with a text that's this complicated and contains so many different genres. And you just can't do it.
When the Reformation hit, Martin Luther insisted that it's only the literal reading that matters. And so he developed a stress on the literal meaning. But even then, through the Reformation and onward, most interpreters recognized that there were other senses in which you could interpret the text. And even interpreting it literally didn't mean like insisting necessarily that every single word has to be directly from God.
Now, I'm going to say this, is that I did not know that Protestants had this nuance until listening to Gavin Ortlund. I know that some Protestants that deconstructed and went back to the faith, like Matt Whitman, have this nuance, but I didn't know that the tradition of Protestantism itself had this nuance available to them. So the tragedy that they lost that nuance is cannot be understated. In their quest to be more and more non-Catholic or anti-Catholic, they lost a lot of good interpretive traditions. And in case you're wondering, yes, that is 2 copies of the Book of Mormon. You can kind of see what we might be doing in the future if this channel does take off.
That idea is a later development, and it had to develop because you had people saying that when God creates the world in 6 days, they'd believe that is literally true, but they'd say, but a day, it could be like a geological period. And so God created the world over 6 geological periods, and that would open up.
What I like in Origin, and I think John Christensen also plays with this, is that if you look at light existing before the sun, that you can tell that something's going on there. There's a play of words happening that has nothing to do with literal interpretation, and why it's a mistake to be ultra-literalistic with especially texts like Genesis or texts like Revelation. They call it the apocalypse, but yeah.
The possibilities then for evolution. And people said, no. It says day. It means day. Day, it's 24 hours. It's a day. And so it's that kind of literalism where...
And that's part of why I don't want to buy the collections of all the Protestant reformers. I don't want to be talked down to and be told to be a Christian I have to accept absurdities. I'm very, I know I have, at the very end of my readings, I have some, the Institutes by John Calvin, and I have The Bondage of the Will by Martin Luther. But I've already read some Protestant stuff, and I don't want me reading Protestantism or Reformation theology to be the thing that breaks my faith. Through cancer scares, through joblessness, through deaths, through tragedies, I've never lost my faith. And even through huge successes and wins, I've never lost my faith. I don't want Protestant Reformation theology to be the thing that makes me say, well, this is too ridiculous. I can't do it. So I'm very nervous about when I finally get to Protestant stuff. Don't get me wrong. The Protestant heretics, on the other hand, those guys I love. I love Master Eckhart. I love Kierkegaard. The heretics are fun. But actual mainline accepted Reformed theology, I'm very nervous that reading the nonsense that they require you to believe to be a Christian, that could hurt my faith. That's why I'm reading all the Christian stuff I can read, all the Catholic stuff I can read first, before I get there. All the Orthodox stuff I can read. In fact, even though I don't have any cash, I have another book by Gregory Palmas that I want to add to my collection. I think there's 127 or 147 volumes total of 147 volumes total of Church Father writings. This is post Nicene Creed writings, pre-Doctors of the Church writings that are available in English. I think I'm like 4 or 6 books away from having all the translations that are out there. Not every single version or every single translation, but just one of each of the writings that are available in English. So I feel like I'm going to be really strong for when I finally do hit the Protestant Reformation, but I am very nervous about actually hitting it because when I first got onto the internet, part of what made me so liberal and part of what made me stay away from organized religion was the Protestant beliefs. They are so, sometimes they are so hateful and so backwards. And so, yeah, seeing that the Catholic Church didn't affirm any of those beliefs made it much easier for me to be Catholic. So anyway, let's keep going.
It has to be strictly exactly what the word says. Is something when it started appearing mainly when people were doubling down on Scripture.
Thank you. Some experts theorize that the quality or lack thereof of the Greek in the New Testament.
Okay, I'm not worried about that. That's what I wanted to play for you guys. Okay, let me go back to the regular screen, and then I will set up the next one, which is Dan McCellen, saying almost the exact same thing. And I just want to put this out there because I want you guys to know that I'm not just BSing, and I'm not just trying to push an agenda. Like this is established. I guess scholarship is the right word to use, but nobody ever call me a Bible scholar, even if I get a degree in it. I'm just a guy with an opinion. Okay, let's see. Where do I go? So we're going to do Dan McCellen next. I should have put it over there on that screen. I don't have 3 screens, even though it looks like I do. What I do is I have a screen splitter, and then I have a... Where's watch later? I dug it. Playlist, live streams, books. No, I want watch later. Watch later. Where are you? There we go. Okay. So, that camera angle is probably terrible. Thomas, you'll love this actually, if that's what you're interested in. I got 2. And I got gaming dice. So I have Darwin, The Origin of Species, and Darwin, The Northern Critical. I don't know what the exact difference is between these two. I don't know if this is like a collection of different writings, but yeah, I got this one. Haven't gone through this one yet. I've skimmed it. Origin of Species, the text on its own is fine. It's not really all that controversial. Even if it's not 100% accurate. Oh, I'm balding. Okay. All right, let's do Dan McCellen. Where are you? Bam. Darn it. Music again.
When we first...
Yeah, no, man. Never be scared of knowledge, and don't even be scared of people's wrong opinions. Like, it can't hurt you. All it is learning more. Just don't be a sucker. Don't just believe everything you hear. Okay, speaking of which.
Mythology as well.
24 years since what?
Since people like you stole the biography of Jesus.
So I literally heard stuff like this from Deconverted Man and a few other anti-theists in my day. As everybody knows, everybody knows. Back when my channel was more popular the first time around, when I was more active the first time, I went up against Godless Cranium and a few other of the big boys of atheism, of anti-theism, Logic. I don't remember what Logic's wife's name is, her acting name. But a few of them. And they would say stuff like what that guy just said. So let's hear what Dan McCellen says.
All right, let's see it.
From Egyptian gods like Horus and Osiris, and from gods from Greek mythology, as well as Babylon and areas around the Mediterranean like Krishna and Mithra, who are all crucified.
That is a ridiculous statement. They were not crucified. Okay, so like I literally read all these myths. There's not a lot of people being crucified. There's no one being resurrected. Maybe you can stretch out resurrection in the death in the land of the dead, but you're still dead. Um, I don't know. I don't know where they get this idea that's. I don't know where they get this idea. I know that there's a terrible book. I think it's called The Golden Bow or The Golden Legend. No, not The Golden Legend. Golden Legend is a different thing. But The Golden Bow, I think, and Religulous, and there's a third one. Oh, I can't remember it anymore. I know I watched it once, and it was so ridiculous that I couldn't take it seriously. It was more ridiculous than any of the theological stuff that I was into.
Not a single one of those deities was ever said to be crucified. That is something that mythicists just made up to provide something other than the most likely explanation for the tradition of Jesus dying on the cross, and that is that the historical Jesus was crucified by the Roman state.
And then resurrected.
And again, the resurrection is the dividing line, not the fact that there was a Jewish preacher in Galilee preaching a new kingdom of God. That's not a heavy thing, a hard thing to believe. And the fact that he was crucified for it, again, is not a difficult thing to believe.
So most of those deities were never resurrected either, but resurrection or coming back from the dead is a pretty widespread tradition around the world and through time. So that's not a huge surprise.
It's like when people try to connect Odysseus going to the land of the dead and coming back, that wasn't a resurrection. It's if you actually look at photos of the real Hades, the real underworld of Greece, you can sail through there. So these are real locations, and I guess to the ancient mind, they populated these very spooky locations with gods and goddesses and shades. Shades are the souls of the dead, if you will. And it's really complicated when you get to shades, because there's the psyche, which goes to heaven or goes to the Ephesian fields, and then the shade that goes to Hades. It gets complicated. But it's actually talking about passing through the Hellespont, and going into that water that's just above Pontus. It's in that area there. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about sea travel. It's a metaphor for sea travel and getting lost. So it's not resurrection. Anyway.
This notion that all these deities were resurrected and that the Jesus tradition just stole from that tradition is another thing that mythicists made up. However, this one is based on some obsolete 19th century scholarship, particularly Fraser's Golden Bough and some other texts.
Yeah, there you go. Golden Bough. And I like that he calls it obsolete. And I like that he's someone who doesn't take the Bible super literal. He's not someone who... and just to be clear, everyone in his little group in what I call the Dark Magisterium, they're totally welcome on my channel. My channel's way too small for them to come onto, but I don't have a problem talking with them. I don't have anything against them. And what they're saying, the facts, the data is the data. It's how you interpret that data or how you use that data to inform your faith that matters. Anyway.
That developed this concept of the dying and rising God motif, which is pretty loosely and vaguely constituted and is agreed by virtually all scholars today to not really have much explanatory power, but mythicists like to try to leverage it to insist that the tradition of Jesus had to have been stolen wholesale from earlier traditions. But that's not really supported by any data beyond the idea that some of the literary motifs that are incorporated into the gospel accounts are probably evoking some of the motifs that are found in other traditions. But that doesn't really...
Yeah, and I've said this on my videos as well, that just because... Okay, so let's say you write a history, but you're also a big fan of mystery novels, and so you write in the style or inspired by Agatha Christie, or if you like horror novels, Stephen King. You can still write a history, a literal history, and use those writing techniques. Also, you have tropes and styles of the day, so Yes, you can pull from different cultures and pull from different traditions and put that ideas into your writing. That doesn't make your writing true or not true. It's just a writing trick. It's just writing.
Have anything to do with the broad outlines of the Jesus tradition. It has a lot more to do with just the way that gospel authors told certain stories, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the foundation of the Jesus tradition itself.
You know, thousands of years before Jesus died for your sins. And this is all documented.
Then show the documents. There are absolutely no documents whatsoever that point to any single one of those deities ever having been crucified, and there are no documents that indicate the majority of them were ever resurrected in anything remotely related to the way Jesus was resurrected. We can find documents that indicate some of them came back from the dead, or some of them traveled to the underworld and managed to make their way out, which is more of a geographical.
I literally just said that with the Odysseus thing. Maybe I don't have his vocabulary, but same meaning.
Issue than a question of dying and coming back to life. But those are things that most people have never even seen, and so they're just relying on the word of other scholars for the most.
And so I agree with that. I feel most people rely on the words of other people. I go and actually read the text, but again, I'm limited to only knowing English, so I'm not taking first-hand account either. I'm taking translation, usually with a parallel text, and I'm trusting the publisher. So that's what I'm doing. Is I go to a publisher I respect, and I look to see if the translator is someone that other, usually if you go to there's like these little like sections where the writer will talk about, or the translator will talk about his method of translation, and he'll give credit to another translator saying, well, this is the one that people think is the best, and this is the one that I looked at it, or this is why I didn't look at this other guy because I didn't think this guy was worth it, or sometimes it'll be in the notes of the translation, and so you get a kind of an opinion or a feel for what translators are good, and that's who you go for. Me personally, I've found that I trust W.H.D. Rouse very, very much, and I trust Thomas Clary very much. And I know that there's a guy here who does translations of the Ninja Scroll stuff that I've read his stuff before, and his translations are really good. So you just got to find a translator and a publisher you trust, and someone you can hold accountable, that if they get it wrong, there's going to be a retraction or something.
For the most part, it is mythicists who are just expanding on 19th century anthropological theories that have been rejected by the majority of scholars.
Okay, this story has been told many, many times, as well as all the pagan ideas stolen by Christianity. You know, like Christmas trees? You ever wonder why there's a Christmas tree?
The notion the Christmas tree was taken from pagan sources is made up. There are absolutely no data that support that. All the data point to the unilateral Christian origin of the Christmas tree.
I'm just very curious where he picked up the word data and why that became a hard part of his vocabulary.
You can see my video number McCellen 1740 for a bit more information, or for a much deeper dive, you can check out Religion for Breakfast's YouTube video, the very recent.
By the way, I love Religion for Breakfast. They're a great channel. Go subscribe to them if you're not.
Recent origins of the Christmas tree.
Or Easter eggs? Why they're Easter eggs? You might want to look that up. Why we have Easter, what eggs has to do with Jesus.
Because eggs became a traditional way to break the Lenten fast in medieval Europe, and they began to be exchanged among the social elite and painted certain colors associated with concepts of joy and new life. And
now, I heard a slightly different explanation for the eggs thing coming out of Byzantine Christianity, but it comes down to about the same thing. Same explanation, but just a different region.
And things like that. And then in the 19th century, we started to get the Eurocentric kind of systematization of how we're going to celebrate Easter, and eggs were already embedded in the tradition by then, so they became a central feature of the celebration of Easter.
Okay, the Jesus fish lifted, that was pagan.
No, it wasn't. It's based on the acronym ichthys, which means fish in ancient Greek, but is also an acronym for Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior.
The virgin birth, that's been done by a lot of gods thousands of years before Jesus.
None of those deities is said to be born of a virgin woman in any tradition that remotely predates the development of the virgin birth within the Jesus tradition, which was a later tradition. It's not found in the Pauline literature. It's not found in the Gospel.
So I don't like that he calls it a later tradition. I'm not sure if the Bible had been finalized when the church fathers began to promulgate, that's the word, began to promulgate the idea or the belief in not only the virgin birth, but also the Theotokos and the Dormition or Ascension of Mary. That's church. That's all Desert Fathers. I do think the Desert Fathers are pre-canonization of the Bible, not Catholic canonization. I mean, like when the canon was roughly settled. I do think they're before then. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, because I'm not sure. I have too many books in my head.
Of Mark. It originates with Matthew and Luke and arises primarily at the convergence of three different main considerations. One, what it means for Jesus to be the Son of God. Two, a reinterpretation of Isaiah 7:14 based on the Septuagint's translation. And three, a desire to distance Jesus from the idea of sexual activity being.
I do think that's something that should be said that a lot of people miss, especially a lot of anti-Christian rabbinical apologists. You know who I'm talking about, Tovia Singer. Is that when we're the Jesus in the Bible, I'm not talking about the man, I don't know, but the Jesus in the Bible, that guy. The writers are using Septuagint. They're using the Septuagint. They're using the Greek version of the Old Testament for their writings. They're not using the Hebrew. So the interpretations are based on the Septuagint understanding. There's this great reading that I actually just read a few days ago from Tertullian, where he talks about how even up to this date, meaning whenever Tertullian was alive, in early Christendom in Rome, when it was still a contentious relationship, you still had Jewish people who would pay the temple tax to get into the museum, the Library of Alexandria, and they would go and read either from the Septuagint or the Septuagint with the Greek there, and then the Hebrew, the original Hebrew, next to it. So that's just something to consider.
Being impure.
All right. Oh, and by the way, Mithra was really born December 25th. Thousands of years before Jesus was.
No, he wasn't. There was no deity that was thought to have been born on December 25th.
Also, let's be clear, Christians don't even hold to a literal 25th of December as the date for Jesus' birth. It's just the date that we assign to celebrate it because of how long the ancients thought it took from conception to birth. There's this really cool idea in the ancient world that you don't know when someone lived or died, someone lives and dies on the same date or with a certain time period, a certain time frame of their birth. They're going to die. So they're squaring up numbers. That's how you get to the 25th. It's not,
prior to the calculation of that date as the most likely date of Jesus's birth by Christians between around 200 and 220 CE. It happened to correspond with the observation of the winter solstice, not the actual event of the winter solstice, but its observed holiday within the Roman Empire. But the day.
And there was also some moving around and trying to Christianize certain pagan ideas. So in order to be more popular, they took like 2 days after or 3 days after a specific celebration when there was no celebration, and they put something there so they can say, like, this is our Christian thing, like you guys go do that stuff over there, we're gonna do this over here.
Data don't indicate that was determinative in calculating that date as the date of Jesus.
And you're wondering where I'm getting that? That's from the Lives of the Saints. I believe it's volume 2.
But the significance of it certainly wasn't lost on early Christians.
Okay. The whole story of Jesus is lifted. It's stolen. It's recycled. It's been going on for thousands of years. This is documented. You can look this up.
Yeah, and while you're at it, you can look up how the Earth is flat and the moon landing is fake and Elvis is still alive and the army is hiding information about the Nephilim that were discovered in Kandahar. Because you can find any conclusions you want on the internet. And you're always going to have to trust whatever person told you the story, because for the most part, you don't have access to the primary text. And the reality is that there are no primary texts that support these claims because these claims are made up.
Now, there's something that he said there, though, that I do think is you don't have access to the primary text. And like I said, even with translations, you're trusting the translator. You're trusting the publisher. For a while there, I would buy anything that I really liked and I thought was true. I would buy 2 or 3 different translations of, just so that way I can see how different translators understood it. And sometimes it would be really far from what that first translation that I read was, and other times they'd be all kind of like really tight on. Elvis is still alive. He just smells funny. I agree with you, Sandals. He is still alive. And when he says otherwise, he's an idiot.
But people like you don't read. You'd rather just listen and believe.
Elvis is still alive, and he got plastic surgery so that way he looks young again.
So I didn't expect you to know this, but maybe some of you guys watching this will look it up and learn for yourselves what's really going on in this world, all right?
Tux, I wonder if, I think you're one of the people who watch me in incognito mode so you don't show up on my numbers. If you're watching, how do you feel about Dan McCellen saying this? Does this hurt your viewpoint, or does this coincide with your understanding of how it plays into the later Gnostic interpretations of who Jesus was?
I would invite you to try to uncover any primary texts that support these claims. At most, what you're going to find is a minority of those deities.
So one of the things that I used to do when I was still in college, I was already about to drop out, is that I would go find source books. And the source book isn't really a source book. It has the original source, and it gives you a number for you to look up, and it'll have the quote, and it'll have the where you can find in the original text where you can find it. And sometimes it'll have a translation next to it. And then you can go, if you have access to it at a college, you can go to these like cool little old school like screens, and you get like a little card, a little photo. You put it underneath it, and you look at, and you're looking at the original translation, but you're still taking the word of the commentator in the source book that's listing all the different sources for what you're looking at. And I do have a source book on Shakespeare that I kept, i.e. I stole. I did keep the source book in Shakespeare. But yeah, man. All right, let's move on to the next one. Here we go. I know I'm a little scattered brain today. Like I said, I had a really bad day, man. Where are we going to next? Let's see who's next. You know what? Let's go to... Which way do I want to go? Do I want to go up? Do I want to go down? We're going to finish with Trent Horn. I don't want to hit him just yet. Let's go check out Patristicfilms, shall we? Let's mute that because you know there's going to be a commercial. Oh, no, went straight in. Cool.
Brothers and sisters, today I would like to just offer a brief word on an important concept in Orthodox ecclesiology. And I do so because this is a theme of constant discussion, and it is important in understanding our identity. And this is the concept of apostolic succession. The very creed that we recite during our liturgies and in other divine services, as well as in our private prayers, speaks of the Church in specifically apostolic terms. I believe in one Holy, Catholic and Apostolic Church. And discussions about apostolicity, what it means to be apostolic, have been part of the patristic discussion since the very earliest centuries, and indeed all throughout the Church's history. And the theme becomes...
Everything he just said is true. By the way, I love listening to Orthodox priests and monks. They just speak in such an amazing way. It's like everything's so important that what they're saying.
Important, it's always important, but it takes on a kind of urgency in its importance whenever there are movements to speak of the Church in relation to other Christian bodies. And very often it is precisely in these kinds of inter-religious or inter-Christian discussions that apostolic succession is raised in a manner that, while not being precisely wrong,
let me lower it down,
is certainly insufficient.
How's that, guys?
And this is the idea that apostolic succession essentially means a chain of unbroken transmission. That the Church begins with Christ transmitting his truth to his apostles, the apostles then transmitting this to their successors, the successors transmitting it to theirs, and theirs, and theirs, and theirs, all the way to our day.
So that's something that people should understand about. I think it's part of where Protestants just get messed up. Because when Catholics say, because you have an anonymous book and you need to label it, and you're going to put the title, well, the tradition says it was written by Matthew. That doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to believe that Matthew is the person who physically put it down in pen and paper. It's that whatever story he told to his church that he founded then gets kept in his church until someone in his church writes it down. And if that community happens to spread it to a different church and a different church writes it down, it's still through apostolic succession, through the laying of hands on bishops and priests, we know where it came from. We know what the origin of this gospel, of this version of the story is. And you combine that with the epistle tradition, where you have what you consider the authentic epistles, which now they're disputed in scholarship, but at the time that didn't really matter as long as it was inspired. So you have a group that maybe wrote in the name of, but it's a student of that person, and they're in that school, they're in that line, they're in that tradition. So it's perfectly safe to say that what they're writing is true, because they're in that tradition. Whatever developed out of it, it's still part of that same stream. And in that same sense, we have things like Vatican II, we have things like the Council of Trent, where we're not saying that the understandings that we have now are the understandings that they have then, but that what we're basing our decisions on are the same decisions that they made back then. So we believe that that this is contained within the tradition. If I do watch the Trent Horn thing, I don't know if I'm going to get to it, but if I do get to Trent Horn tonight, the Catholic Church's claim is that the true, authentic church subsists within the Catholic Church. Not that everything of the Catholic Church is part of that original faith, but that the original faith is contained within the Catholic Church. Just something to think about.
And thus, a sure sign of the truth that we receive in our day is that it bears this lineage of succession back to the apostles, to Christ God himself. And thus apostolic succession becomes a manner, if not the critical, the most important and significant manner, for asserting the authority of the Church in her course of history.
I think that's good right there. But that's kind of what I wanted to hit on. And I think that's a really good explanation of it. Oh, we have a comment. What do you call a person that... Okay. What do you call a person that wants Trent Horn? Trent Horny. It's okay. It's okay. It's not a great joke. Not a great joke, Sandals. You know I love you. That wasn't your best material there. You know what? We'll do 2 minutes of this. This will probably be the video next week after we do Taoism. We'll do Taoism Monday, Tuesday, and then if we need another video, the Wednesday, Thursday one will be the Trent Horn versus Redeemed Zoomer. Just get a taste. Oh, commercial's gonna play. Nope. There we go.
Cast. I'm your host, Trent Horn. Joining me today is Richard, aka Redeemed.
In these conversations, clarity is more important than like agreeing with each other or like winning arguments.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, because I can't debate. I'm not very good at that. But I do like to learn about the differences between denominations. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people.
I think it's really interesting. When I started off, there wasn't a lot of Catholics on YouTube. It was mostly Southern Baptist and individual free churches just preaching insane nonsense. But the quality of Protestants that have remained on YouTube and have become popular has gone up real high. Gavin Ortland, for instance, Matt Whitman. This guy, if you watch this whole interview, which, like I said, we might do, he wipes the floor with Trent Horn. I mean, he really beats him over the head. And I don't like Calvinism. I don't think Calvinism is correct. But man, every single apologetical trick Trent Horn tries to pull, this kid is ready for. And as far as I know, he doesn't have a doctorate or any degrees like that. He's just simply read. And I really respect that. I really like how he handled himself in this interview.
People are really interested in the differences between, Catholic and Protestant and all these things these days.
Yeah.
So that's why I have some questions about Catholicism. It's like I've asked other people these questions, but I think the more I talk about it, the more clear of an understanding we can get. I know a lot of people who watch my channel, watch your channel.
Yeah.
They're thinking about this more than ever. I've never seen a time in history where people are thinking about the differences among Christians more. So, yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here. So why don't we start? You've got some of the questions here, and we can go through them and go back and forth. So let's begin.
Sure, yeah. So there's a lot of Protestants who are investigating the claims of Rome. And the biggest claim that seems to be the most convincing is this idea of the one true church.
Right.
Some of my friends would call that ecclesialism or whatever you want to call it. The idea that there is one true church that is one specific denomination or institution, as opposed to the view where the one true church could transcend denominations and institutions.
Right.
One of the things that I don't like is when people try to say Catholicism is a denomination. Catholicism holds different churches, different traditions within it, different rites within it. It's supposed to be the universal cap, the universal umbrella for all churches. Obviously, it's not. Obviously, there are some schisms, the Great Schism, the Minor Schism. And by the way, it's the Chalcedons. That's the name that I forgot last time. And, I mean, I get it. You're a Protestant, you take the Bible as literal, you just found out that evolution is real, that dinosaurs existed, and you're feeling lost. You're looking at Orthodoxy, which seems to have a strong foundation, and then you're looking at Catholicism, which is the biggest Christian denomination in the world. You want to know why. Like, is it true? I get that, but, I don't know. Let's keep going.
So I think it's pretty easy to sell people on the idea of one true church. That's pretty easy to find in the church fathers.
I just, one true church being the selling point, I've never thought of that way. The corrected church. When I did my journey, I was looking for the correct beliefs, for truth. It wasn't really looking for the true church. I believed it was the true church anyway. So like it wasn't like I was looking at I wasn't even looking at it through that lens. It was like, here are all these different forms of Christianity. I was just looking for what does the Bible say and which religion matches what the Bible says the most. That's how I did it. That's how I came to accept Catholicism as the correct one.
there are differences, but they're not all minor differences. There are important differences amongst the denominations.
Right.
So I also think another point that I would raise is when we talk about ecclesiology, like what's the true church?
I feel like I can hear
I think we have to be
Trent twisting his tongue to say things in a way that Redeemed Zoomer is saying them.
Careful of two extremes. So one would just be that the church is just an invisible union of Christians.
Mm-hmm.
The church is just everyone who's a true Christian,
right,
united in some way. I feel like that truly is, like, I could hardly even call that a church, because then it's like, how do you know who are the true Christians and who aren't?
Okay, let's get a little bit bored. What's next? Let's see what's here. What's this one?
Your life will be transformed. He will transform you. You will not transform yourself. We have the opportunity and the invitation to give our free will.
The border wall one
back
is the one I
Lord,
wanted to do
say,
today,
just
but I
as
think I'll
Mary
save
did,
it for
our own personal
tomorrow.
fiat, right? Our own personal, your will be done, not mine. Whatever you want, Lord, be it done unto me. That is my prayer, not only for myself.
Let's go with homeboy over here. And then
mobile games are
we'll
going
do
big.
some Death Darling for a second.
Hello everyone, Dark of All Trades here. Now for today, I'm going to talk a little bit about a well-known and oft-used argument by apologists and theists. That is Pascal's wager. However, I want to approach it from a slightly different angle, and approach the argument with a second wager in mind that I don't see brought up enough. That is the atheist's wager. Similar to Pascal's wager, the atheist's wager is not about proving or disproving a god, but rather it addresses how one should live their life. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Pascal's wager is a philosophical argument proposed by the 17th century French mathematician and philosopher Blaise Pascal. The wager...
Guys, what do you think if I started using an avatar instead of just using my face? I mean, I'm getting pretty old. How do I just took a younger version of myself and made a little avatar version of it? You know, maybe like more in my 30s or in my 20s, you know?
Suggests that it is a rational decision to believe in God, even in the absence of evidence, because the potential benefits of belief.
You see, Jesus is the door, I take Bible literally.
Such as eternal happiness in heaven, outweigh the potential costs, such as nothing lost if God doesn't exist. Pascal argued that belief in God is a prudent and rational choice, as it offers the greatest potential reward and imposes minimal risk. The common argument...
I don't know why everybody gets this wrong, and I think even Trent Horn mentions this. Pascal's wager is if you're already convinced that Christianity is true, if you're already on the edge, but you're not convinced enough to cross the line, you're not convinced enough to actually get baptized. That's where Pascal wager is meant to function. It's not meant to function for the atheist who's a mile down the road and hasn't even got into the important questions yet. And it's not meant for the atheist who's a mile up the road who would turn left and went a completely different direction. This is if you're teetering on the answer and you don't have anything holding you back from accepting Christianity or accepting a God. And actually, it's for Christianity. It's not even for a God in general. For accepting Christianity as the truth, then you should just take the plunge. If there's nothing holding you back, it's better to take the plunge and be right than to not take the plunge and be wrong, if you're already teetering on that edge of being a Christian. So, people misunderstand Pascal's wager. Even my friend, Professor Dark.
The argument for believing in God as a rational decision is often grounded in Pascal's wager, a pragmatic and risk-averse approach to faith. Proponents of this perspective contend that in the absence of conclusive evidence either proving or disproving the existence of God, it is more rational to choose belief over disbelief. The reasoning behind this lies in the potential consequences of the choice. If God exists and one believes in him, the reward is eternal happiness in heaven, while if God does not exist, there is, according to Pascal, little to no loss in this life. However, if one chooses not to believe and God does exist, The consequence is eternal damnation, representing an infinite loss. The argument therefore posits that belief in God, regardless of empirical evidence, is a rational strategy based on maximizing potential gains and minimizing potential losses in the face of life's ultimate uncertainties. Now let's take a quick look at the common understanding of the atheist's wager. Michael Martin is arguably the inventor of the atheist's wager. He states that if one were to analyze their options in regard to how to live their life, they would arrive at the following possibilities. You may live a good life and believe in a God, and a benevolent God exists, in which case you go to heaven, your gain is infinite. You may live a good life without believing in a God, and a benevolent God exists, in which case you go to heaven.
No. The key to getting to heaven is not being a good person. It's faith in Jesus Christ. That's it. Only the chosen, only the called. Yes, there can be exceptions for people who, based on irresistible ignorance, can be allowed in because God can let anyone in. It's up to God. But that's not the formula. The formula is not that you have to be a good person or you have to live a good life. The formula is that you have to believe in God and you have to turn away from your sins. And then if you still live after you do that, if you're still alive, now you have to live as a Christian does. You have to change your ways. But that does not mean that you were a good person all the time or that you have to be good all the time. It means that you've submitted your will to God and you're trying to be Christ-like as much as possible and God-like. Being a good person in a subjective way or in a relevant way, in a relativity way, subjectivist way is not what it's talking about.
And your gain is infinite. You may live a good life and believe in a God, but no benevolent God exists, in which...
Or you might live a good life and reject God, and you still go to hell. It's not really... This is not a good wager.
Case you leave a positive legacy to the world.
I don't even think it works on equal grounds. I don't even think it works on equal grounds of the correct way to posit Pascal's wager. So Pascal's wager is that if you're already about to be a Christian and your only hang-up to be a Christian is belief in a deity, but you agree with the principles and you agree with everything else, you believe with the maxims, you agree with the practices, and you see the positive aspects of them and you want those things, but you're not 100% sure if there's actually a deity behind it, then you choose to be a Christian. I don't think it works in reverse that, okay, well, if you believe in a God and in having a good life, you're going to choose to be an atheist. That just doesn't make any sense. That's not how Pascal wagers works. It would be if you don't believe. It would be if everything's shitty and everything's going wrong and everything is bad and no matter what you do, bad outcomes happen, and no matter how good you are, terrible things happen. It's Marquis de Sade. Marquis de Sade is the opposite to Pascal's wager, not this argument. It would be if everything in your life points to that there isn't a God and you haven't decided whether or not there is or isn't a God, then that's how you make that decision. That's how you would choose atheism versus just not believing. So I don't think this reformulation works.
Your gain is finite. You may live a good life without believing in a God, and no benevolent God exists, in which case you leave a positive legacy.
Sandals is trying to be funny again. He asked the question, would trying to be God-like include trying to create a universe? Here's your answer, Sandals. Yes, it's called creating life. Be fruitful and multiply. You create a universe by having a child.
Legacy to the world, and your gain is finite. You may live an evil life and believe in a God, and a benevolent God exists, in which case you go to hell. Your loss is infinite. You may live an evil life without believing in a God, and a benevolent God exists, in which case you go to hell. Your loss is infinite. You may live an evil life and believe in a God, but no benevolent God exists, in which case you leave a negative legacy to the world. Your loss is finite. You may live an evil life.
See, I don't agree with that at all either. There's another one. What you do in this life matters. Because nothing matters, everything matters. What you do has consequences. That's what original sin is. It's that first mistake, whatever that first mistake was, continues to have consequences that magnify and multiply throughout the ages. And every new mistake renews or increases the size of that snowball, leading to immense catastrophe, which gets expressed all the time in the world. And the answer is peace and love and forgiveness. Break the cycle. That's Jesus Christ. So yeah, I don't like this formalization. We're going to go about a minute more on this, and then I'm going to try to see if I can... I'm using my YouTube setup, not my Twitch setup. I'm going to see if I can somehow get in a few minutes of Pharaoh.
If without believing in a God and no benevolent God exists, in which case you leave a negative legacy to the world, your loss is finite. Here's a table that shows the value assigned to each possible outcome. The atheist wager serves as a compelling...
I think I'm going to be done there. All right, guys, let's... let me switch the scene real quick, and let's see if I can get this to... Let's see what I can do. Let's see. See if I can do... Oops. No, it won't let me. There we go. Okay, you over here. Okay, let me put that one. Put that over here. Put that over here. You don't need to see any of my contracting. And let's share screens. Let's go to watch together. Switch screens. Bam. There we go. Okay. Here we go. Oh. Oh, I think it crashed. I don't think it worked. Oh, no, there we go. We're okay. Oh, I don't think it's loading. Let's see. You know, I honestly forgot what I was doing in this game. Here.
Destiny calls me, and I am compelled to answer.
Proud son of Egypt.
Let's see. Can I build something? I don't want to build an outpost.
Prayer is power. Shrines in your land are imbued with the presence of the gods. Through their priests and your devotion, you can benefit from divine grace.
Saduk. I don't think there's anything I can actually build.
Pitched battles and blood-soaked glory are but one side of war. Your warriors need rest and supplies if they are to march victoriously in your name.
Blessed by the gods.
We must always protect the Ma'at.
What do I have? Got a bow and arrow guy. Spear guy. Oh, faction. Hey, the Habaru. My pre-Jewish ancestors. There we go.
I summon the elite.
Let's get some stuff.
My army will be elite.
Kind of like medieval. Yeah, this is Pharaoh Total War. It's really not a great game, but I love Total War, so what the heck.
Your people suffer at the hands of enemy raiders. Send out warriors to eliminate this threat once and for all.
I agree. Okay, I'm done there. Life. So how do people do it? I've seen the streams where they're watching something on their live stream and playing a game at the same time. How do you do that? Oh, I gotta go down. Huh, dog it. See, I was getting all this stupid stuff wrong. Okay. Okay. Who's attacking my lance? Who is attacking my lance?
Life is not fair. Neither am I.
I am unstoppable.
You know, I don't, on Twitch, I don't usually do these kind of games, and I really should, because when I'm playing stuff like,
Ready for battle.
Stuff like,
you will know defeat.
I don't know what any of this is. Just declare war.
Destroy them. Glorious combat.
What's going on? Come on, fight.
All will remember me.
Come on. Hey, fight this guy.
I will carve out a legacy.
Fate favors me.
Fight, do something.
Beyond compare.
No, this is not as good as Rome 2 or even Troy. Troy Total War is really good. Rome 2 is amazing. Rome, the original one, is great. The remake's okay once you add the original music back in. But like, as you can see, the controls here just suck. It's a terrible UI system. Just go away.
Chosen of Ra.
No time for chatter.
I really don't understand why it doesn't let you do things. So weird.
Fate beckons. My focus is supreme.
I don't understand the limitations of how to play in different games. I just want to freaking fight. I don't want to do any of this crap. Go away. Go away. Go away. Go away. Damage. Universe. What's damage? And now all of a sudden it's night. All I want to do is fight.
In the name of duty.
You're telling me again why I can't fight from inside my thinking.
Forging my fate.
I'm not in any stupid stance. Because of that, I can't fucking fight.
Ramesses the Bold.
I'm not kidding. Like this just changed to the whole.
An army is nothing without a general, and the general is nothing without a trusted band of warriors by their side.
Done. Instruction available. Yeah, no, if you ever played the original Rome, it's probably one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life. I can still go back and play that game. Medieval 2 is really good. Shogun 2 is really good, although I never finished Shogun 2. I finished, I think, the Ninja Story or the... I don't think I finished the third part to it. Attila has never been playable on any platform. I bought it a long time ago, but it's never been playable for me. Where's my enemy? Is that my enemy?
Ready for battle. I hate talking.
Is that my enemy?
Life is not fair.
This is terrible. I can't tell anything. I coated my ass. This is so stupid.
All will remember me.
I just want to know if he's my enemy or my friend. That's it. That's all I want to know. The UI on here is so bad.
I will carve out a legacy. Always ready.
So you're wondering why I'm even playing this if it's so frustrating. I used to play these. Games.
In the name of
for a
duty,
very, very long time.
journeying on.
And I really, really like them. So the fact that this guy
Destined
gets it wrong,
for greatness.
it's not the worst thing in the world.
That won't work.
Come on, who are you still recruiting?
The future
Never
of
been
Egypt. Hard march ahead. Blessed by the gods.
Our current whereabouts have proven hostile to your soldiers.
Shut up.
For the Empire.
You have shown excellent tactical foresight. Reinforcements stand by to aid you in the coming battle.
Here we go. But no, I want to play this because I love this period of history. I love the Sea People. The book that I wrote was about the Sea People. It's a fiction book. I like the Hittite culture, the Phoenician culture. I was actually hoping there'd be more emphasis on the Phoenician culture here. I love anything pre-Mycenaean fall. It's so hard to find information about that time period, but it's so much fun to read about. Where are my allies coming from? Allies, where are you? Okay. So I want everyone over here.
Today we triumph and feast.
Reinforcements arrive to support your army. Together, you can vanquish the foe.
Advancing. With me. Moving on. I fought worse than these dogs. Slow the pace.
You guys are walking, you aren't even fighting.
Is there no end in sight?
Seriously, you're not going to even advance? Alright, okay, now some.
Be wary of their slingers!
trained all our lives for this.
They cannot hope to match our skill.
Infantry moving! March them on!
Oh my gosh, this is so difficult.
Stone them! Whack their heads! Marksman, left flank! Clap! Glorious combat! Aim for the heart!
Shoot those arrows! Slingers cross the way!
Glorious combat! All for Egypt! Born to do battle! Stone them! Crush their heads!
Retreat!
March at speed! Mighty soldiers!
March hard!
Javelins away!
How can you guys
You
do-
are looking defeat in the eyes!
The fear in your eyes tells a different story.
Slingers cross the way!
Javelins away!
Please! Mercy! Get out of there!
All right! Retreat! Stone them!
I will not die for this!
I will prove my strength! Egyptian javeliniers!
Prodigy of
Ready
war!
to see your own blood?
Ha ha! The dead one speaks!
Retreat!
Throw those javelins!
All for Egypt!
They are too strong!
Son of Egypt! I will mount your head on a spear!
I don't like talking to corpses!
Too much blood!
Too much butter.
Get back!
Our
See me through! Moving close! To bloodshed! Javelins, launch!
Is this the end of us?
Let's see how we do.
I grow stronger each day.
No time for chatter.
Proud son of Egypt.
Destiny calls me, and I am compelled to answer. Boundless ambition.
Fate beckons. On my way!
That's my road stuff.
I will carve out a legacy.
No one crosses my line!
Only the best will stand beside me. We will gather strength.
Yeah, we will gather strength. Getting our butts kicked.
Blessed by the gods.
Ready for battle.
Here. I kind of wish that they had put Israel in here, or Canaan, or whatever they want to call it, instead of how they did it. They did just fine. But I feel like some of their decisions here aren't historically accurate. And other Rome games, they usually are. Rome games. Other games like this, they usually
I will
are
be
so
legend.
accurate.
Battle lines.
We will show them the might of Egypt!
Faster now! Conserve ammunition! With haste! Keep your distance!
I fought worse than these dogs!
Conserve your stamina!
Archers, fire!
Fire! I will prove my strength. Don't give chase.
Axe warriors!
Watch their heads! Never back down! Swordsman! You'll die!
Strength is power! Axe warriors! They will bleed!
Moving on!
This is not going as planned!
Aim for the heart!
Do not doubt us! Foes release!
You cannot defeat me!
Shoot those arrows!
Soldiers, move! Throw your javelins! Strength is power! Stone them! Infantry moving! On the march! Marching on! Gods guide my hand! Got it! To bloodshed!
Your general has fallen in battle. Rethink your strategy or risk defeat.
Please! Mercy!
Huntsman! Back in the sky!
We stand strong!
Stone them!
I don't know what we're gonna lose.
Not this time.
I don't know. Is it all historically accurate? That's what I wonder. Okay, guys, I think that's it for tonight. I know I didn't really talk so much the second half, but I'm a little beat.